All right, and welcome back to Continual and Hot Off the Press. Tonight we have another one of those fun publisher takeovers, and it is tonight the one and only Mocha Memoirs, brought to you by Nicole Givens Kurtz, and we're going to be talking about the latest anthology, Slay. And we've got a bunch of the favorite authors from the anthology. And before we get started too much, I'm going to go around the room and let everybody introduce themselves. So, Penelope, I'm going to let you go first.
Please. I'm Penelope Flynn. I am currently a resident of Dallas, Texas, soon to be moving to Washington, D.C. I write horror, erotica, fantasy, science fiction. I am thrilled to have been included in the Slay anthology because, my magnum opus is about, vampire hybrids. I'm the one to date. And this has been a thrill to work with Nicole. I know her out there. She's been promoting for a very long time, doing her thing, and so it was really kind of neat. Or so okay, she's doing a vampire anthology. So I was really, really happy to be included in it. So this is me. Thank you.
Alledria.
Well, hello there, Continual. This is Alledria Hurt, and I am a writer of fantasy, science fiction, and horror. And what can I say about being in Slay other than I was so excited when this came out. I was so excited. I was like, yes, vampire anthology. So yeah, when I got the acceptance, I danced.
Jeff.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm a person of all things pen and paper. Okay. A writer of sci-fi and horror. And the more I read, the more I say, I write what everybody else writes. I like to write myself in the stories, and I'm learning to include more of my sense of humor and my political expressions and to this challenge that we call 2020, right? I've been writing fiercely over this home occupation that we're a part of. And it's been exciting. So I write, I started off as a filmmaker and I wrote a few horror films, have 3 in the can, or 6 in the can, 3 came out, and I have 3 that are delayed until we get this thing figured out. And I'm excited, as Alledria said, about being included in Slay. My first vampire story, although I've written vampire comic books and vampire screenplays, this is my first story, and I am so excited that I also was able to do something else where I blended what I call the holoverse. So I have my own multiverse, and it's so cool. It doesn't mess up. It complements each one of my stories, and I'm so excited to be a part of this and talk about the things that I'm doing and listen to the things that other people are doing. Share and receive motivation.
Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Cage, and I, like all the others, I'm very excited to be a part of this. I write paranormal fantasy, dystopian, post-apocalyptic, all things magical, basically. But I started with vampires. My very first series was, a mix of sci-fi and paranormal. And when Nicole reached out to me about being a part of this, I was like, yes, because my readers have been bugging me to get back to vampires, and this will be a great segue back to what I call home. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here and excited to meet and mingle with all the other authors.
Miranda.
Hi, I'm Miranda J. Riley. I am a young writer who is in the process of getting her first stories published. So Slay will be my official first publication. So that's super exciting. But I also, thank you. But I also feel very honored to be amongst all of you and amongst everyone else, and to have my story contend with everybody. And I'm currently working on a young adult series called Maria Belmont and the XXX, as the 3 books are being titled. And First one right now is Maria Beaumont and the Fire Princess. So really excited about that, waiting to hear back from some publishers on that. And I also have another short story that got accepted for publication, and that one is to be determined. So very exciting things are happening.
BG.
I'm VG Harrison, and I write science fiction. I'm also known as Marcia Collette, and I write paranormal under that pseudonym. I've been writing for a while now, kind of took a break in between, a break a little bit longer than I'd planned, but I didn't know child single motherhood was that hard either, so kind of why there was a pause in there, but I'm slowly but surely edging back into it and getting back into it, and I think around that time was when I discovered my love for sci-fi, and so that's when I created the VG Harrison name and started doing sci-fi under that one. Until now, I haven't really merged the two. So, but I love being, I'll tell you right now, when I saw the cover to Slay, that won me over. You know, they say it does 1,000 words, I just needed 5,000. And I just saw that cover and I was like, there's vampires out there and there's so many great, fantastic writers who wrote about vampires. Who am I to write about vampires? I mean, if I do paranormal, it's going to be werewolves, it's going to be ghost catchers, it's going to be angels, it's going to be something, you know, kind of off the wall, because I can't do vampires. I just can't. And then I saw that cover and I was like, well, I better learn how, because
yes, you can. Yes, you can.
I love the cover. But I also decided I didn't want to do Marcia Collette. I wanted to do V.G. Harrison because most of the stuff I've done up until now has been self-published. So I was like, I need something. I need somebody else to take a look at some stuff. And you know, so I said, why not put it under V.G. Harrison? That meant they had to be sci-fi. So I was like, hey, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But I went with it and I said, okay, let's do this story. Let's do it and put it out there, because I got nothing else to do while I'm sitting around during Q-word or
these challenging times.
So I said, let me go ahead and do it. And so I had fun writing it and everything, and I'm just excited to be in them. I didn't know the anthology was that big. I was like, whoa.
It's huge.
I'm going to have some stuff to read. So I'm excited just to be with all these wonderful, amazing, incredible authors, and under the amazing and lovely Nicole Givens. Yeah, I'm thrilled. So yeah, that's me.
And now to the one and only.
All right, so I'm Nicole Givens Kurtz, and I'm the owner of Mocha Memoirs Press. I'm also a speculative mystery writer, so that means my stories have, they're usually mashups of science fiction and fantasy, along with mystery, suspense, thrillers. And I also write horror, weird westerns. I'm also the editor for Slay, Stories of the Vampire Noir, to which this panel is here for today. One of the things about Slay was the dedication for Slay is to LA Banks. And I don't know if anyone's ever familiar with LA Banks, but back in the early 90s, she started writing a Vampire Huntress series set in Philadelphia. And one of the things that really connected, it was the first time I had seen and read a Black female protagonist in an urban setting hunting vampires. And it was very much rooted and centered on that Black experience. And I remember that after her untimely death, Kai Leaks, which is another contributing author to the anthology, would often lament on social media about how she missed her and how she missed her work and how she wished there were more stories. And I was like, you know, I kind of feel that way too. And I often was thinking, you know, what would be great if you'd have like an anthology of just Black vampire stories. And I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. It'd be great if we had a publisher who could do that. There probably isn't any interest for that. Like, vampires are so overdone. And so that's been on my mental plate for a couple of years. And then I was like, you know, I was actually looking through, I buy cover art the way some people buy clothes. And so I'm always looking at cover art, and Terria Reed is one of my favorites. So when she has a summer sale, I always go look and see if there's covers that I like, and I can just go ahead and buy them when they're on sale and then use them later. I actually have a folder of just covers I haven't used yet. My husband says I have a a problem and I need an intervention. But anyway, long story short, I'm looking
It's called being a publisher.
right. So I'm looking at these covers. I'm like, I'm looking for horror covers that feature Black women because they're almost incredibly hard to find. And so she had a couple, and one of them is Alice, which is going to be Allie's upcoming book from Mocha Memoirs Press. And the other cover, it was the one that ended up being Slay, Stories of the Vampire Noir. And so I purchased both covers a while ago and kind of just stuck them in the folder. And then I was looking through, like, I need to use these, right? So I'm going through them like, oh, I have the perfect cover. I have the idea. I'm actually a publisher. I could do this, right? And so I went to Terry and I was like, I don't have a title. So I told her what I wanted to do and what the anthology would have, but I didn't know what to call it. And so she was like, why don't you just call it Slay? And I was like, ooh, yeah, the double meaning is fantastic, right? Slaying vampires, vampire slayers, slaying because we're awesome. Okay, I have to have it, right? And I added the subtitle of Stories of the Vampire Noir because there is another novel, I think, called Slay that was very popular. So I wanted to give it a subtitle. So that's kind of where we arrived at that. And then I did a call. I had anchor authors. I reached out to Jessica. I reached out to Jeff. So I reached out to Cherie, Renee, Tom. I reached out to a lot of people to be anchors, like 10 people. And then 6 of them said, yeah, we could do that. And I was very excited about that. So then I did an open call, and then that's how we got another bunch of amazing stories. But it is huge. It is 468 pages. It's a big volume of work. There are 28 stories, and they are, it will be available in ebook, paperback, and hardcover.
So let's talk a little bit, just, as you're coming in and talking about creating the stories and looking for the stories, what were the things that really called to you for the stories that crossed that line and said, I got to have this one. This is one I have to have?
Oh, it was so hard. It's like asking me to pick my favorite children, right? So it's just so hard. But one of the things that I really liked was, and what I was really looking for was not the traditional European standpoint for vampire story. Not a revenge story, though we do have one or two of those. I didn't want the tip. I wanted something different. I wanted something that centered Blackness, that centered the African diaspora. I wanted stories that were different vampire stories. And that's kind of like where BJ's story comes in, and Jeff's story comes in, and Miranda's story comes in, and Alledria's, and even Jessica's story too. They're all very different vampire stories, in the sense that in Slayer stories, they're not typical what you would find in any vampire book you picked up. I wanted these stories to be unique, and I wanted them to be very different, and I wanted them to center on that African diaspora, and so, or African American, right? So I just wanted that. I needed that. I also needed stories that weren't all. I wanted a range. So like Jeff's story is very different than Miranda's story. And even though Allie's story and Miranda's story both take place in African countries, they're very different. And so I just wanted, very different stuff. And even though Penelope's story kind of references Stoker's Dracula with the Renfields, it's still a very different take on that story. And so I wanted different. I wanted stories that like Jeff's story made me laugh at the end. Jessica's story made my heart beat because it was so fast paced and action oriented. I was like, oh, like I could feel myself running down the steps, right? And Allie's story made me cry. They had to have emotional impact, no matter what the emotion was. It had to have an emotional impact for me and evoke a strong emotion. Stephen Van Patten's story makes me cry. And I've read it 3 times now because it's about a daddy who's a former vampire hunter and his daughter. And I'm a daddy's girl. So that I died. I cry every time I read The Retiree. Right. So all these stories had to provoke very strong emotion for me. Alledria's story, I don't have a sister, but I do have a sibling, and that story, like, it evokes a very strong. It stayed with me. It lingered after I finished reading. The same thing for Miranda's. Those stories linger, and so for me, reading through Slush, if they didn't like hook, of course you got to hook me. If they didn't center blackness, right? If they didn't have, or there were some stories that just didn't. I deliberately didn't pick stories that take place in the antebellum or with people being enslaved or on a slave ship. That just, I feel like we have so many more stories to tell being about the African diaspora that I did not want to take up spots in my anthology with stories about slavery or the enslaved. I just didn't. So those are and it was hard, Jim. I'm not gonna lie. I had a folder of I like these stories, and then I would have to go through and trim that down because originally there were only supposed to be 15 stories. There are 28, so it was very difficult to trim it down because there was just so many good stories.
Let's dive into and let's start finding out a little bit about some of these stories and the people that wrote them. So, VG, we're going to go with you first.
Okay, so my story, Message in a Vessel, sci-fi, takes place kind of like in the future. Mosquito bites have caused people, mosquitoes are bloodsuckers anyway, that's what I call them. So mosquitoes basically cause the vampire disease in the world. And so now the problem is that the vampires that are running the planet are starting to run out of food. They've got to go other places. They got to find food somehow, some way, shape, or form. And the only place they can get to right now is beyond our solar system. The technology is there. They can do it. So they put together this big, gigantic spacecraft, and we're going to go out ahead and send, just like you have a message in a bottle, this is a message in a vessel. Come, find us. Or, we can come find you. Let's all be friends. And really what we're saying is let's be food. That's what we're looking for. And so the scientist who's in charge of creating this message and basically creating a program that goes out and searches these specific worlds that are similar to ours, that may have people there that are similar to us who we can feed off, that's her job, is to create this program that does it. And she's got some baggage behind her. This is a very fascist regime that she lives in. And so she's got some baggage there, but she's got to do what she's got to do. It's her job. So she does her job, so to speak. But it's not going to turn out the way everybody's hoping it does. So that's kind of Message in a Vessel. Mm-hmm.
So Miranda, for your first published outing.
So, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So my story, Rampage, is about is about an elephant that has been infected with the vampire disease and is going berserk in Kruger National Park and eating all of her herd and other herds. And Aziza, who is a warrior and a protector and a mother, she lives in the small village of Mashanga in Mozambique, which is a country that I used to live in, and Mashanga was very near and dear to my heart, so that's where I drew my inspiration from. And she has this, she has a story behind her where she had to protect her village from vampires that came in and wiped out most everybody there. And they're still in a state of rebuilding and getting out and get past that horror that happened. So when she gets called in to tackle this other problem in another country, she's like, I don't want to go. Like, that's away from my family that I'm building. That's away from my people that I've sworn to protect. But the Order of Vampire Slayers is saying, no, we need you. Like, you're the best one around. We need you to do this. And she learns that she can't rely on herself to tackle all her problems. She has to rely on help, and sometimes she has to rely on a little magic. So,
Jessica.
So my story is called Gritty Corners, and it's more modern day. set here in Chicago, my hometown. And it's about a woman who is at the prime of her life. And I wrote it in the vein of like 2020. I walked into 2020 thinking like this was my year. And then that was kind of snatched away a little bit. So she's at the prime of her life. She's celebrating her natural hair care company, making her first million. And then she gets snatched up by a vampire. He bites her, supposed to kill her, but doesn't, and leave her in the alley. So she's on a hunt for him. She's like, you took away my life. I was at the prime, and now I'm a vampire, and I don't want this. So she spends 5 years training with her vampire mentor, Graham. He helps her get herself together so that she can go after the guy who took her down. But there's some twists, there's some turns. I wrote it in the vein of my grandmother as well, because she loved like the 40s, like gritty, just the noir, right? Like, so that's what I had in my mind when I was writing, which is I write action, I write like fast-paced storylines. So I wanted this to mirror what I already do. So it's modern, it's America, it's, Black girl had her day and someone took it away, so she's out for revenge.
Jeff?
All right. My story stems from my experiences in life, having immediately worked with comedians and trying to make my next experience as a writer really meaningful. I stepped into dabbling with fan fiction. And I used to work with Tracy Morgan from Saturday Night Live, TV show. And I said, you know what? I need the vampire idea. So I thought of, I liked his show, or at the time I was watching The Last OG. And then I thought, wow, that's so cool. So I thought of the concept of a vampire being imprisoned and returning to a modern world. And that was just enough of my premise. And I had this organization in one of my comic books, in the script that I wrote, called Vamp Five Vamp. And it was just a play on college. It was like Lost Boys. And so I said, what if I connected that to it? And I had an experience where my vampire, I show you how he lives. He's a little maverick. He's a little outside of the box. And I made because I'm not in a fraternity sorority. I'm not in a Greek-lettered organization, but I have a lot of respect for them. And I always tell people they're so different on the undergraduate level than what you see on the graduate level. And, they do have secrets, and we don't need to know all about the things that they do. Just know that they do things, right? And so I wanted to put a little bit of that in the story. And this group of Vamp Five Vamp members have been around, hiding in the shadows, protecting Black people. And at the time where things change and shift for Black people, their role is changing and shifting. And just as Black people think they may reach a finish line, around the time of electing Barack Obama or whatever it was, this organization is now figuring out how do we shift our gears? And some of them are not ready to shift gears because they come out of a period of time where it was straight war for Black people all the time. And this vampire could not adjust to the time. And so he had to be put down, and now he's returned, and we don't know what the world is like. He is not ready he got encased in the 20s, and now he's in the 2000s. And it's a different world. So I just wanted to stop there with the story because I want to know where it's going to go. I have a lot of questions, and I had a lot of fun writing it, because I like talking to old people, and, I'm a middle-aged person. So I'm a school teacher, so I talk to young people, and then I talk to elders. And I just think that this course is extremely fun. So that's kind of what my story will give you a feeling of, the old, new, and the middle, right?
Alledria.
Well, I wrote the story Ujima, which is a word I borrowed from Kwanzaa. It means collective work and responsibility, and mine is a family story. It is literally about the bonds that bind us together and the choices we make to uphold them. So we have Imani, who is a newly minted vampire, she has a new family, and then she runs into her old family. And then she has to make the decision, who wins? And from there, we have a story.
So Penelope, you're on mute.
Hold for a moment. My story is about, of course, how it is that the stories that I've already written dovetail with Bram Stoker's Dracula. And my mythology, we have a hybrid group that is part regular human beings and part vampires, but the vampires in my storyline are from another dimension, another universe. So when they come here, they are very erudite, they are philosophers, they are intellectuals, but the place where they're from is very called like the land of never-ending twilight. When they come here with all the extremes, their self breaks, bifurcates into a feral side and then the civil side because of all the extremes of very bright day, dark night, hydro deserts versus, sand deserts. Everything to them here is extremes, and their psyche cannot manage that. So in order to exist here, they have to have somebodies that take care of them. When I first read Bram Stoker's Dracula many, 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 many years ago, decades ago, the character Renfield always was interesting to me. He's a small character, but an important character in the book. And what I thought was like, well, we have this one guy who's kind of a madman. So what if he's not the only one? What if he just happens to be this particular vampire's acolyte? What if there are entire families that handle this? My story is based on the stories that I've written are based on, and the story Unfleemed is about a very particular one who is actually unfleemed. And fleems, if you know, they're the same as like fangs. They are, used to exsanguinate. So fleems here, fangs front, center, fleems here, canines. So he is, in this story, unfleemed. And it's about how these people, their relationship deals with how Bram Stoker's Dracula actually comes to England.
So a while back, we did a show called Writing Vampires That Don't Suck. And Nicole, you were on that one. And so it was about both the challenges and the lessons we get from using vampires, and what does the mythology mean to us? How do we use that in story? What's the importance of it? Because, the concept of vampires have changed radically over time. It's one of those things that's part of our core mythology, and culturally, every culture has a different concept of some sort of life sucker, blood sucker, 6 foot tall mosquito that's going to, exsanguinate you. And, but other times it's always meant to be a very intimate sort of thing, or it's very primal. And so when you were working with vampires, looking at telling craft and telling that story, how did that come into play with creating your take on the creature and the monster, and how intimate you were with that universe? So, Jessica, I'll start with you this time.
I don't know. I feel like with vampires, there's a little bit more leeway than I think people think there are. I like to play with mixing them and twisting them as much as I possibly can. But before I started publishing, I thought there are so many rules that we can't break. We can't break these rules. We can't twist them. Vampires are afraid of the sun. They're burned, whatever. And then I started reading books like Twilight, where they're like sparkling in the sun, and just kind of understanding that you can play with it and people won't like hate you for it, right? So that kind of took, I guess, the fear of making vampires more than what we know them to be, right? It took that fear away. So I feel like when I do write vampires now, I feel freer to kind of twist them like I would any other character or species or supernatural being. But then you still have to be very mindful that there are people who are they're fanatics for vampires, and if you go too far, like with anything, they'll come for your neck, so to speak. So I try to keep it in tune with me, like where I like fast paced. I like to create hybrids of some sort. They're all throughout all of my books, so I will twist the vampire as much as I can, but just up to the line where I think a reader might come for me for doing so.
So is there a trope there that you think is a line I just can't not go there?
I will never make them sparkle. I know that much. I feel like I get so much hate for saying I like Twilight. So I'm like, I'll stay away from that realm of it, but I've done a lot to vampires, and so far I haven't gotten any hate for it, so we'll see.
Yeah, I wrote a scene where, the comment was, vampires don't sparkle, and the guy says they do if you roll them in phosphorus before you throw them in the sunlight.
There you go.
Miranda.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. So, are there things about the vampire tropes and mythology and story, that are really important to what you're trying to do in the story you're trying to tell, and B, are there lines you're not going to cross there? When you're stretching your truth and working with the story and the mythology, what really is core to you about it, and what are ways that you can twist it? The things that really make it your vampire, your creature.
Yeah. So one of the things that I focused on was blood. When you think about vampires, you think about they're bloodthirsty. They want to drink your blood for either eternal youth or for survival or for vengeance, or just that primal need to eat. And so in my story, blood, is a major part of it, because there is a difference between the blood of a vampire and the blood of a non-vampire. I was trying to think of another word, and I was like, I can't use human because my vampire is an elephant, so there's animals involved too. So
I have to tell you, when you first said that, I started picturing using tusks but
yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay. So vampires, non-vampires. And one of the things is that in my world, vampires can hide very easily. They don't burn in the sun. They don't, their eyes are different colors, but they can hide them with contacts. And so vampires are very secretive in my world, but there are ways to distinguish them. And my main character, Aziza, she figures out that way through some old, I don't want to say voodoo magic, but it's kind of like your old shaman who comes along and is like, hey, I have a secret. It's this ancient legend. Let's see if it works. And, that's how she's able to move on with her challenge. But that was one of the key things, is that blood runs in all of us, including the monsters, the good guys and the bad guys. And it's something that not only does it distinguish us from each other, but it also unites us as one. And so that was my key focus. And that was the one thing that I had to keep the same, was the thing about the blood. So.
Alledria?
Well, there's actually the one trope in my story. There's actually two different things that vampires consume. One is the elixir of the gourd, which is what actually makes you a vampire. And the other is blood, which is just a natural food source. So those two things are required to make it the vampire of my mythos. and I had to keep it. I had to keep it pretty much. I stayed with the "thou shalt not go out in the sun," and you will consume blood in order to exist. Hunger makes you a danger, but I did not go with the whole feral ferocity. You have the ability, they have the ability to hold themselves back, which she does. Yes, baby, I know.
We're not on Zoom till we have a cat.
Well, she has decided that she wishes to make herself known.
Penelope.
Well, in Renfields, of course, since it does relate to Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I've always said that, you know, my vampires are, you know, from a different universe, and they are very smart. On the one hand, you know, you deal with them and they are quite civil. On the other hand, you know, when they hit that feral episode, they can be, you know, quite dangerous. And because they have, again, all the old vampire limitations, you know, they do require that Renfield in the middle to manage their household, to manage their businesses, all that, you know, so they remain kind of the same. I do take on all of that. But I think the reason that the vampire mythos is such an attraction is because, unlike things like werewolves that shift completely and then they become completely animal, that the vampire is like one of the few that still talk. So you can still communicate with it even as it's trying to kill you. So I think that that's one of the attractions, is having a monster that can actually reason and talk to you. And also the issue of the characters I have in the middle, though my Renfields are very wealthy, very intelligent, you know, just like their progenitors, they are also marginalized from either side of their lineage. So in my thinking, the way that I've created this, it's kind of like almost the African American experience in the United States, that you come from two separate types of lineage, a blood lineage and a cultural lineage. And, you know, you feel kind of in this middle space where when things go wrong, either side of your lineage is very happy with pointing the finger of blame toward you. So this is a group of people, a family, a clan that has become very insular. And this particular storyline talks about the whole Renfield storyline, how it is that they have to find security, but also connect with people outside of them in order to survive in a world where, you know, from moment to moment, day to day, you know, year to year, you could be on someone's hit list. And this world, of course, contains all the Obeterum, which are all the other things, the Fae, the merfolk, the goblins, and it's all basically about business. Renfield's really, you know, is tied a lot into business, the business of life, the business of family, the business of survival. So, and all those things, I think as a person of color, especially in the United States, that we deal with those on a daily basis. So it's kind of like the way that I work through it, you know, in my own way through literature.
So makes me wonder, or makes me think about, you know, you talk about the fact that they're coming from another universe, they're coming from another dimension.
Yes.
How does that come into play for your difference? Because the fact that they're an interdimensional being, not necessarily just another biological creature or something that results from a virus or magic or whatever the case may be. So how does it, you know, how does that work for you in your universe, and why go with an interdimensional creature?
I think the reason that I went with something that's interdimensional is because we have a belief that we understand everything that is here right in front of us. You know, I'm a child of the Star Trek, you know, generation. So of course, all that, you know, with space being the final frontier, passing, you know, Star Trek Voyager from, you know, one quadrant to another, all that's just, you know, it's part of who it is that we are. And for me, it has to all kind of make sense. And I think in a world where we kind of an understanding biologically what is here and why it's here. And you have something that is supposed to be aberrant, like, a vampire, then maybe it's something that has come here that this is not its home, and that's why it reacts the way that it does. That it's not that it's just an evil thing that comes up and does terrible things. It's just that it is a thing that where it comes from, it is a normal thing. When it's, put under the light of some other universe, it becomes something else. Kind of like how people are in real life, that you may be fine living within the home that you are, the community that you live in. You move from that community to another community, and now you are the other. You may be marginalized, you may be venerated. Well, it's kind of are you a god, or are you a monster, or are you something else? So I think basically it's like playing fast and loose, that I get to create the rules by which they exist and how they get here without having to be screwed in to, this is why this is why Lamia are one country and Pundaloo is somewhere else. Kiangxi is something else. I get to define how each of the vampire mythos have arisen. So I guess that's it. It's kind of to give myself a little bit more latitude in creating. And also, I love science fiction. So, why not? I love the mashup. And it's a mashup. All Renfield's not so much Unflamed, because Unflamed I had to show some restraint. But, the rest of it, yeah, I mean, there's erotic content. There is, violence. There is romance. There's business, always business. Politics, so yeah, I think that all of us to some extent, it's like when Jeff was saying how he puts himself in his work. I think we all to some degree, you find a little bit of who we are in how it is that we have, put our work out there. And so I think, yeah, you find a little bit of who I am and how I'm trying to fix the world or figure out the world, and that's what you find in the work.
So Nicole, with your vampires.
I don't have a story in this, right?
Yeah, I know, but you've still written.
I'm a horse in the race.
I have never written vampire stories.
No?
I have never written a vampire story. Only because I never felt I had anything to add to the mythology. Pretty much what BG was saying. Was saying earlier. I've never written a vampire story. Out of all my weird westerns and all of my horror stuff, I've never written anyone that's a vampire. I like to read them. I like to watch them, but I don't feel like it add anything to, right, I just don't. And after reading like all of these stories, I'm still amazed, because I'm like, I would have never come up with even the ones that weren't selected, I would have never come up with those ideas. I just don't think I could add anything else to it as an author. And so not in the ways these guys have. So yeah, I've never written a vampire story. Out of all the crap I write, I've never written one.
Well, in that case, BG.
Well, for like Nicole said, there's a lot of stuff out there, so I had to dig. Believe it or not, I did have to dig deep for this one, so that's why I opted with the V.G. Harrison to write the vampire story, since that's my sci-fi pen name. And so for my vampires, I definitely wanted that. I don't break the rule about blood. That's what they have to have. Now, with that being said, I have various options in my story in terms of how they get it. They can either get it fresh. Another option is you can go to I can't remember, I think I call it a blood farm or something like that, where people are placed in comas and they're just there. They're like gas tanks. You just get what you need from them, and you don't have to worry about the drama that comes with it. And there's another option, there's a third option, which is through animals. So there's different ways that you can get blood. Of course, fresh is the best. Animals, however, are like, okay, yeah, You know, if I want some dehydrated food, that would be like an animal, okay? You know, if I want rations, that's what I would basically put the animal at. So when it comes down to the blood, I did not deviate, or I tried not to deviate too much with that in that respect. Now my vampires, they are on the moon. So, or at least when the story takes place, it's on the moon. They're on Earth too. I don't mention very much about them in terms of the sun. I don't think I mentioned anything at all in terms of the sun. And when I set the story for Message in a Vessel, I kind of wanted to put the vampires on the dark side of the moon, because I still wanted to keep that sun mythology in there to some respect. But I didn't really focus on that too much. With all of the vampire stories I read out there, I'll be honest with you, I thought garlic was the most dumbest one. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I love garlic a lot, but to me that was just, why would garlic repulse them? I could think of a lot of other things that would. So I said, let's toss that one out. That's not even relevant to the story. So the other option, another thing I mentioned in my story were stakes. And in this case, I think I mentioned metal stakes or silver stakes. They don't kill a vampire, but they could paralyze them. So if any of my vampires in the fascist regime step out of line, just stab them in the neck, because you only need them from the neck up, really. You don't care about what's going on down below. So that was also kind of mentioned in the story as well. But yeah, that's kind of as far as I wanted to take my vampires. And given that the fact that they do live a little bit longer, I didn't want to make them immortal, because there's a lot of immortal vampires out there. I didn't want to make these guys immortal, but however, they do have an extremely long longevity. I think I have them up to like 130 years is how old they can live. And so that's part of the reason why there is a food shortage as well. Because you live that long, you're going to eat a lot of food. So that was something I kept into the story. There was something else I kept into the story. I'm trying to think of what it was. In terms of the vampire mythology, I can't remember it right now, but the longevity was definitely one thing that I did want to focus on in my story. So it's almost like I kind of picked and chose, and I kind of limited it here, limited it there in terms of mythology. But stuff like garlic, no, that's not in my book. We're not doing that. We're not doing the immortality thing either. And believe it or not, with there being so many vampires, these vampires didn't just, come up being vampires. In some cases, the families themselves the kids were like vampire hybrids when they were born. They were full-blooded vampires. So parents have a choice. They can either let their kids be blood bags, or if they want to, they can bite them, but only certain people, because let's be honest, we don't want people that can't be of service to society being a part of the vampire culture, That's just not going to happen. That's just
No slackers.
Exactly. We don't need slackers, okay?
If you're going to be around for 130 years, you got to be doing something.
You got to do something.
You better be useful to society. Exactly. So that was kind of something I said that's got to be a part of the mythology. You have to be useful to society to be bitten. Otherwise, we'll make the choice for you. Your kid could be a blood bag, whatever the case may be. And so with my heroine, her parents, they were scientists. And so that's why she is, in a way, a scientist as well. And they said, we could use these people. So that's why the parents were like, well, let's just go ahead and bite the kid. So she becomes a vampire, because I'm not letting her become a blood bag. Because being a kid, you don't know you can have two parents who are scientists and your kid still ends up on Skid Row. Who knows what's going to happen. So the parents weren't taking a chance. They went ahead and bit their kid and turned him into a vampire, and then they raised her basically with their scientific knowledge and everything, and so that way she could become a contribution to society. So those were
Skid Row.
Skid Row vampire.
Someone needs to write that story, right?
We're eating the resources. You can't eat the resources. We're in a food shortage here. So you know, like
Is that
I
how
said,
you then create a snack bag?
I mean, right? Or you become a snack bag, right?
exactly.
Her story is incredibly clever. So with that, if you guys who have proofs, you should definitely skip ahead to read the to read Message in a Vessel.
I made a deal with myself. If I was going to shortchange the mythology in some places, I had to come up with a good reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the reason why there's like no longevity, no Skid Row vampires. You know, I had to give a little and get a little to put this world together. But like I said, no garlic. We don't care.
I don't think I have anybody no one used garlic.
Oh, thank God.
In all 28, I'm like, I don't think anyone used garlic.
I think it stems from the fact that garlic repels mosquitoes. So,
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's my book.
So Jeff,
I could.
what about? So Jeff, what about on your side? What
Okay.
about you and the myth and the tropes?
Well, like I said, I've been connecting all of my dots, right? And I've created other characters. Like I had my first science fiction horror book was about a gargoyle, and he hunted down vampires and werewolves and protected his territory. So I already had elements in my universe for my interpretation of vampires. However, I will say this. I have a philosophy long before Lovecraft Country, right? That I feel Black writers should not read H.P. Lovecraft. Not because he's a bad writer, partially because he's racist, but more partially because he represents a certain ideology. And I consider myself a science fiction writer, but my dominant science is social science.
Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, I like to, I'm also a Pan-Africanist, and I'm also an African romanticist, right? So as H.P. Lovecraft may say everything in Africa is bad, I may say everything in Africa is the light, right? So the answers, the understanding, good, whatever you want to call it, right? So I immediately approached my story by saying, this isn't a curse, right? So let me figure out how not to make vampirism a curse. These aren't monsters or something that creates only monsters. So like, I like to look at balance. So I just watched Doom the other day, and they said, you know, this will infect you and it will bring out in you what is, or bring out of you what's already in. It's almost like alcohol. You know, some people go to sleep, some people get violent. You know, you're already a violent person, you know. So I wanted it to be something like that. And so I connected it to ancient Egypt. I connected it through people in African-American history, like Benjamin Banneker, who studied Egypt. And I'll say this to you, VG, right? In my world, I do include garlic. It's not in my story, right? It's not in my story, but it's in my holoverse, right? So my wife is what I call a witch. Now, mind you, that is an English word, but in African languages or even in African-American subculture slang, she might be considered a naturopath. She might be considered a herbalist, right? So the term witch may be derogatory. In her understanding, we have these herbs, and garlic is one. And when you look at what garlic does to the body, right, it increases your circulation. It's healthy. It's good for you. So if I'm a vampire who has to arrest my aging process, who has to arrest my blood circulation, there's some possible lie that I can tell in there to make that garlic seem undesirable to a person who is immortal, right? So again, a lot of my, I guess, mythology and theology comes from a different interpretation of what the existing tropes are. So I think I have a lot of, I have a lot of fun with it. I think it's cool. I don't see it out there. It's like, in my world, ghosts are given a bad name by people like Lovecraft. I look at ghosts in my culture and say, oh, my grandmother just slammed that door. Or I saw my grandfather the other night. I don't think Amityville Horror, ghost, run, get out. So I go down that rabbit hole and say, well, let's not think of them as bad. How would it be to think of them as not bad? And what else comes from that? So there's a whole lot more. Even silver. We're in this period of dangerous germs, right? And so when we go back to ask people, why do they call it silverware? And why was it first made silver, to eat out of? Because it doesn't really transmit germs. So if we're looking at these things as being spread similar to viruses, right, we would want to make sure something repelled that. So a silver stake, silver bullets, a lot of these things can be used if we go back and kind of, here's a modern term, kind of look at Bram Stoker as fake news, right? and classify that as some type of misinterpretation of something that may not be really that bad. Even though in my story, vampires do what we might consider things that are not bad. Miranda, here's something that you might like, right? When I watch the Nature Channel and they say, oh, the lions are eating and that's so bad, I'm like, it's a circle of life, baby. It may not even be bad to the gazelles. You know what I'm saying? They might be sacrificing themselves. I think it's all subject to interpretation. So I like to explore that interpretation. And my vampire mythos is an exploration in kind of the opposite of what we see in the Western world without messing up any of the main tropes. I'm inspired by Blackula and Blade and all of L.A. Banks. That's my girl.
Well, guys, we've been going for an hour.
I know.
This went fast.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is have tell everybody where we can find you and come back for more. And hopefully we'll be seeing all you guys back here again to talk even more about this. Penelope, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you. You can find me, of course, Facebook. It's Penelope Flynn Media. Twitter, Penelope J Flynn. Instagram also PenelopeFlynn.com. For Renfields, renfields.net or renfields.us. Patreon, Penelope_Flynn. And in the evening, Saturday night, 9:00 Eastern Time on Talk Shoe, we do discussions from the Otherhood, which is a podcast for other sci-fi, which basically discuss all things that are Black, people of color, and entertainment and media. And tonight, if you all join us, if you are so inclined, we're going to start talking a little bit about these new Oscar rules and what that kind of means to us and what our take is on it. Monday through Friday on Twitch, and this is on twitch.tv/eamazingxp, the Amazing Experience. Every morning from 9 to about 10:00 Eastern Time, I create landscapes, worldscapes, fantasy worldscapes on Flowscape and talk for an hour. So that's where you can find me.
Alledria.
I'm gonna do my usual, which is to say that if you can spell my name, I am the first 5 pages of Google. I don't know if that's ever gonna change because I don't know if there's ever gonna be another person who has my first name. But if you do first name, last name, everything that comes up on the first 5 pages is nothing but me.
Yay!
What a brand.
Mhm.
Right?
Go on.
Miranda.
So I have a baby website in the works. So if you want to go check that out, it is out of date as of last year because I got married. But it's Miranda J. Oh gosh, what is it? No, it's mjrileyonline.com. Because there are other authors. There's a Miranda Riley and there's an MJ Riley. So I had to do Miranda J Riley to distinguish myself from the others. And you can find me on Facebook, Miranda J Riley, and you can follow me on Twitter at the Spunky Dragon because that's me, all things dragons. So that's
Sorry.
all.
It's so cute.
Jessica.
I can again say like Alledria, if you can spell my name, I'm the first couple pages. For a while, I wasn't because my name is Jessica Cage and everyone thought I was a comic book character. I'm not. I'm a real person.
Yeah.
So I had to fight to reclaim my Google page. But I am J Cage author on all platforms. That's Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. Same name, easy to find me. You can also find me at jessicacage.com. If you join the website, there is a members area where they get sneak peeks about new stuff that's upcoming. Working on I'm gonna throw it up since I have it. This 7th book to this series, The Gem Rebellion, is coming out, so they're getting sneak peeks about that. But yeah, Jessica Cage, that's me.
Yay.
Jeff.
All right. I like to Google, but there's a bunch of Jeff Carrolls out there. So you have to go Jeff Carroll author, and then still you gotta look for the black guy. So I am Jeff Carroll. If you hit any of my books, I still use my Amazon author page, which is most of my published work. I have had other publishers, so it's all found there. I don't have a website yet, but also my company, Hip Hop Comics and Flicks, is now doing to this journal period, right? I've been really successful at Kickstarters. So I've been doing comic books, and my comic books, I hadn't been doing them for years. So my Kickstarters are really doing well. So look for me there. Also, I'm old and middle-aged, so I'm Facebook dominant, but I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram. I don't do Twitter too much. What else? So like all of those platforms. I'm not on TikTok yet, and I'm supposed to be getting on LinkedIn or reactivating it. So Facebook is the best place to reach me. And then on my Amazon page, you'll find my books, and then also Kickstarter. And then if I could plug my Holoverse, all of my characters, I'm getting ready to launch my Fingernails series, which is going to be the daughter of Thug Angel, and she is going to be a paranormal investigator. I'm so excited. It actually is like Scooby-Doo. So it's a young adult children's comic book, and I've been getting so much interest from it that I'm writing a young adult novel next year on Fingernails. So look for me, check me out, been a pleasure.
VG.
You can find me under vgharrison.com, which is where I write my sci-fi stuff. You can also find my paranormal stuff under marciacollette.com, MARCIA. Doesn't matter if you use 1 L or 2 L's, I have them both. I claim both.
Well done. Well done.
So, for a while there, I wasn't doing too much Twitter, but with the release of Slay, I've been doing a lot of Twitter. you normally couldn't find me on Facebook. Now that Slay is out there, I'm on Facebook at least once a day, minimum. I'm just promo for that. I can't remember if I have a Facebook page for VG Harrison or not. I think
I haven't seen it.
I may have given it up because it's hard running 2 websites. So I just do a lot of promotion through Marcia Collette. I do what I can through VG Harrison as well. And as for me, I'm going to plug my other book. This is the one under Marcia Collette. It's a second book in my YA series called Silent Scream. And so this is going to be coming out, I think, like 2-3 weeks after Slay. Like I said, it's a YA. It's a second book. The first book, I wrote it, but let me put it this way. Parental guidance is necessary just because there's no parental guidance inside the book for the kid. Mama's locked in. There's no parental guidance with this kid. I will say this PG-13 though. That's all I'm going to say about the first book. The second book gets better because Mama comes back for a minute.
Nice.
It is YA. VG Harrison has some, VG Harrison has some stuff coming out. I just finished the standalone last night, and I got to finish, I just this close from finishing a trilogy with VG Harrison because I want to shop off. I just want to, I wrote the trilogy because I was like, I didn't want to write one book. I just want to write all 3 and be done with it. So
there's something to be said for having them to roll.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. So that's pretty much VG Harrison and Marcia Collette.
And Nicole.
So you can find me at mochamemoirspress.com. You can find us on Twitter at Mocha Memoirs and on Instagram at Mocha Memoirs Press. Same thing for Facebook, Mocha Memoirs Press. You can find me as an author at NicoleGivensKurtz.net, on Twitter at Nicole G. Kurtz, and the same thing for Facebook. What we have coming up is Slay, Story of the Vampire Noir. That's what Mocha, and we also, so for Mocha Memoirs, we have Slay coming out, but 2 weeks before that, or a week before that, we have Alledria Hurt's novel, zombie novel, post-apocalyptic dystopian novel called Alice, coming out, which is a very fantastic story. I've had to read it several times now, and I still really like it. So Alice comes out October 6th, Slay comes out October 13th, and sometime in December, the second novella for myself for the Kingdom of Avis, A Theft Most Foul, will come out. That is my fantasy mystery series that is set in the Kingdom of Avis. And so that's kind of what we have going on the next 3 months.
Well, guys, thank you all very much for coming and joining us. I hope Slay does fantastic, and hope to see all you guys coming and joining us again soon. And until next time, everybody, this has been Continual. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.